through a mutual friend in 2011. He and I vibed. He was gracious enough to let me become a part of the team. I've been involved in boxing all of my life, but I started coaching and training. My first person I trained was back in 1983. Learned the sweet science and just perceived myself to be, I guess, a good trainer. Like, took no backseat to anyone. I got to Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I met this young man, this gentleman, and let me tell you something. I joke with him, but in all sincerity, I thought I was number one. Absolutely not. I deem myself number two. He's number one. I still hold that sentiment in my heart to this day. Anytime a coach runs off 23 national champions, 6 world amateur champions, got to take a back seat. My next guest, ladies and gentlemen, Andy Smith, my friend, my brother in Christ. Welcome, Andy. How you doing this morning?
Man, I'm blessed, Coach Dale. It's an honor to be on your show. Been keeping up with you, seeing some amazing guests you've had on the show, and man, just honored to be a small part of this thing.
Man, listen, the pleasure is mine. Andy, let's go back just a little bit, and you are an amateur boxer yourself. You started at the age of 10. And you finished up boxing at the age of 15 years old. And then you did something you don't see a lot of people doing. At the age of 17, you started coaching. I talked about it yesterday. I said, oh, you got that Teddy Atlas syndrome going on. Tell me, how did it all start for you?
Yeah, well, my dad started a ministry, YCAP, under the YMCA back in '98, and at the time we did Little League football the first year, and so coached Little League football. Huge fan of football, and when football was over with, it was like change of weather, it's getting cold, and it was kind of like, okay, well, what's next? And then that's when we said, hey, let's try boxing. It may stick, it may not, and man, did it ever! And what we found is that man, we could change the trajectory of a child's life through a boxing glove.
Wow, that's awesome. You also have a program in the summer called Boxing for
Boxing Bullets.
Right, Boxing for Bullets. Tell the fans about that.
Yeah, so we developed. There's a camp about 35 miles north of the city of Chattanooga, and it's a summer camp, and outdoor in the wood cabins. It's on a lake. And man, we take our whole boxing gym up there and we open it up to kids all across the U.S. to come in for a full week. And man, we do 3-a-days, every single day. They get fed great meals. They get to play a little bit and really just teaching the sport of boxing and giving these kids an opportunity to participate and also alongside all that, coach, just being a kid, right? And letting them enjoy the fun side of what camp has to offer.
That's awesome. Andy, I've known you since 2011. Always been humble, but like I said, a lot of fans don't know that you were an intricate part of 2 Olympics. One in 2008 and 2012 Olympics. Why don't you elaborate on that? Tell the fans. Don't be bashful now.
Well, in 2008, my dad was a team manager for the Olympic team. Joe Smith, he actually went to Beijing. But what was interesting about that team was they actually did about a 15-month camp prior to the Olympic Games. And so they actually brought those guys in 15 months out of the games, and they actually lived there in Colorado Springs. And Coach Bashir Abdullah, and Coach Dan Campbell brought me in. I was just a young pup at the time, but they brought me in, mentored me, and gave me an opportunity to work with those guys and help prepare them for the games. So, that was a fun, unique experience in 2008. And you look back at that team: Deontay Wilder, Rashid Warren, Gary Russell, Saddam Ali. Just some great names. And then fast forward to 2012, Coach Abdullah was the head coach, and they actually switched it up a little bit. They didn't bring the guys to Colorado Springs. They took them to Carson, California, and outside of LA. and we trained at the heavyweight factory there for 6 weeks right before heading to the Americas qualifier, which was in Rio de Janeiro. And so I got to spend 6 weeks with them, and then went with them as a coach over to Rio. And we got 8 of the 11 guys qualified there in the Americas. And, that was your Jamel Herrings, your Jose Perez, just a fun crew there. And then, guys like Caleb Plant that was in training camp. Marcus Brown was one of the Olympians. Right. Just a lot of big names, and just, a very humbling experience, and so grateful for the friendships made, but then more importantly, watching those guys chase their dreams.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And just to be, to even be an intricate part of that, knowing Caleb Plant and working with him, and he's a world champion now, and Deontay Wilder, of course, we all know who he is because of your generosity and kindness. A lot of people think I throw smoke. I was working with a program called Team Challenge, and we would help you guys set up the ring and stuff like that for amateur fights. And this one occasion, Deontay Wilder came up, and you allowed us to talk to him. And he, the kids were like, "Who's this guy?" He was only 8-0, 9-0. And I had a chance to take Deontay Wilder to the side, and we were talking. And I never forget this, and I hope he would always remember this conversation. I told him, I said, you're going to be heavyweight champion of the world one day, right? He goes, you think so? I said, watch and see. I was like, I could see it in you. He goes, okay. He said, if you say so. I said, watch. You'll be there. And lo and behold, some years later, here he is sitting on top of the world. But let me just take a backwards note here. The Tokyo Olympics are over. And of course, in other sports, athletes have, secured gold. Andy, elaborate what is going on with the amateur boxing program today that we're not capturing gold in boxing. What's going on? Give us your insight on what's happening with this.
Well, I think number one, if you look back, Dale, this Olympics we had, what was it? 2 silver medalists, men's division, and then had 2 silver medalists, I believe, in the female division, but maybe they were bronze. I'd have to go look. But, a lot of things have changed, man. Ever since Seoul, Korea with Roy Jones Jr., if you remember, and he got robbed.
Oh, yeah.
The scoring changed. It went to a computerized style scoring, and then so we spent a lot of years there in the early 2000s trying to beat the system, if you will.
Right.
But then this last Olympics they changed it back to the pro style scoring, which, oh, by the way, that helps the Americans because we tend to box that style.
Right.
But Dale, I think a lot of it is political. I think. And then the other thing is kids in America nowadays, man, they get 18, 19 years old, they're turning pro. They're not staying around. Rashid Warren was kind of like a once in a lifetime type guy, 3-time Olympian, So, it's the state of USA boxing is kind of what it is. I wish that they spent more effort and time on the grassroots.
Right.
I'm a big fan of seeing a kid start at 8, 9, 10 years old and raising him up, as opposed to, you build a boxer to a certain level and then you just give them away to the coaches at the Olympic Center and then they take over, And so I think it's a lot of it's political, but again, I think the other piece of that is a lot of these guys are turning pro at a young age. And, quite frankly, when you're 18, 19 years old and you get that kind of money flashed in your face, why would you? If boxing is not taking care of them financially. So I just think that, those are the 2 biggest hurdles.
How do we go about, I guess, if, anything is possible, but how do we go about fixing it? I mean, think about it. You and I both know that when you are in an LBC or you have a gym in an LBC, there are dues that you pay, for the year. Like, I don't know what it is now. Last time I had ran a gym was like $250 or something like that to get it covered. So you multiply that by all the gyms in the United States and with the dues that athletes pay. Isn't there somehow, some way that that these programs, these youth programs can be almost, I wouldn't say overhauled, but tweaked to give these young people, say, listen, some incentives to go to train. You know what I'm saying? So how is there any? I don't know. You tell me. Do you think there's any kind of hope that we could turn it around? Because I mean, think about it. You and I both know, like the '76 Olympics, '84 Olympics. Man, we had guys. I mean, gold, bringing home gold. Period. And now it just seems, I heard what you said, but now it just seems like you said, like kids are like, I'll go pro and stuff like that, which I think is a harder hill to climb.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, Dale, there's a lot of other factors that take place when you start talking about youth and boxing, and I'm going to step outside of boxing too and just say youth sports in general.
Right.
I think kids have such easy access to technology, to these gaming systems. And man, you're talking about a generation that, they don't play outside anymore like we did.
No,
they don't
right.
shoot hoops, and they don't go outside into the yard and put on the gloves and just do a little backyard box. You just don't see that anymore, man.
Wow.
And so I think that plays a lot into it too.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you running the boxing program at the YCAP, you surrounded yourself with some great people. You have former amateur boxer in his own. His name is Chad Henley. Good guy, no nonsense. I had the opportunity to work with him. He does not mess around. When you told me to, I remember when you told me to come to your gym and you were running late, and I told him who I was, and he was on one side of the ring and I was on the other, and he was taking pictures of me, sending them to you, saying, "Who is this guy?" Well,
every gym's got to have that guy that just, he doesn't take care of the dirty work.
He is that guy. He is that guy. But he loves the kids, loves boxing. Great guy. Had that pleasure meeting with him. You also have a young man right now, Roger the Hitman Helly. Tell us about him. He started off as an amateur. Tell us where he's at right now.
Man, Roger came through our program, Dale. Lived in my home for a long time. My parents have fostered a lot of kids over the years. And man, from a really rough background, just really bought into what we were teaching him. And not to say he didn't have his own struggles as he became a young adult, a young man, but won a couple of national youth titles, in the amateurs. And then most recently in the last 4 years has turned pro. He's 9-0 as a pro. But man, even with all that said, Dale, I think the cool part of that story is that every single day at 5:30, Roger's in our gym and he's teaching the kids and he's giving back.
Wow.
And
awesome.
and man, a lot of times I think we get stuck on how many titles people win or how much money somebody's worth. But I think a lot of times we forget to talk about the important part of giving back, right? Exactly. And paying it forward to the next person. Because man, that's really what this whole thing called life's all about, right? Is making the next person a better person.
Oh, absolutely. And he's pro now. So what's his record right now?
So he's 9-0, and wow. He's got 6 knockouts, and he's doing everything from here at home in Chattanooga. And listen, Chattanooga's not a boxing town, man. I mean, we've tried that way. We've hosted the National Golden Gloves twice. Yeah. We've hosted the U.S. Championships a couple times. We've hosted Junior Golden Gloves, but it's just not a boxing town, man.
Right. Wow. We also, I wouldn't be fair if I didn't talk about another young man that came through your program, the brother of Pac-Man Jones, Tay Jones. I don't know if I'm sure you've been keeping up with him. Remember him as an amateur coming up into the program. Good young man. He's with the Wilder camp right now, and he's doing his own thing. And man, that's just a tribute. Goes back to where it started from, and that's from the YCAP boxing. You have my prediction now. 3 to 4 years from now, Roger will have a world title around his waist. Wow.
Buddy, I hope so. Man. I hope so.
And listen, you tell him. I remember the days you let me catch pads for him, so he owes me a complimentary ticket on the world title fight. So you make
That's
sure.
right. Front row and center, baby. Front row and center.
Eddie, let's talk about the things that are going on in boxing, the big fights. Have been getting canceled, and oh my goodness, we had Deontay and Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury. We supposed to be talking about it right now. Supposed to be scheduled for July the 24th, and of course, it now is going back to October the 9th. You above anybody knows Deontay Wilder, and I want to put you on the spot. But tell me the keys to victory so that he can regain that title. What are your thoughts, and what would be, if you were in his corner, what would be your fight plan for him at this juncture?
Well, I've been watching a lot of his training videos that he's got. He's got a guy that's working the mitts with him now, and I'll tell you, these guys. Listen, he's going to be a problem for everybody.
You look at Facebook sometimes as well as I do. I always get amazed. Sometimes you can't even answer people when they start to discredit him as a fighter.
No, man,
and
can't do that, man.
I tell people, they were like, "Oh, he can't box." I said, "Well, here I'm going to give you a boxing lesson, logical one-on-one boxing. You cannot go to the Olympics if you can't box."
That's it. Hey, he didn't win a bronze medal because he's not.
Exactly. And I tell these people, and I'm like, what are you talking about? But sometimes you have to say, okay, they're young, they don't know boxing, they just go, they run their mouth and stuff like that. In the upcoming, October the 9th, everything goes well. Who are you picking in that fight? It's a rhetorical question, but I'm going to.
Man, I tell you, man, from what I'm seeing and from the focus that I'm seeing, now I don't talk to him like that, on a daily basis. And I don't talk to him, and I don't really know what's all in his head.
Right.
But from everything I've seen and the way he's carrying himself now,
sure,
as opposed to prior, I'm gonna go with him, man. I'm gonna say and it's crazy that I'm saying this, but he's gonna shock the world because he's gonna outbox the guy, and the guy's not gonna touch him.
I'd love to see that happen. I'd love to see that happening. So, as you know, the world was waiting a couple of weeks from now. We were supposed to see Errol Spence, Manny Pacquiao, and all of a sudden, boom! It had leaked at one time that he got that injury in sparring. Guys were, doing some, putting in some work in sparring. Where do you see that fight? Do you see that fight rematerializing, or?
Man, listen, man. I'll be honest, Dale. I love the Pacquiaos and the Mayweathers and that whole generation.
Right.
It's time for them to move on, man. I want to see Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford. Let's put it up.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see. That's what I want to see.
I don't know. I don't know. And I say I don't know. I do know why these fights are not being made. Listen, these are the fights that the public want to see. These are the fights that turn around and people say, listen, at the end of the day, because you can go back in time, Hagler, Hearns, Sugar Ray, Duran, and Leonard. These guys put it all on the line because, yes, it was about finance because that's what they did for a living. But in addition to that, they were like, listen, it's about my legacy. Money's going to be there, but at the end of the day, I don't want it ever to be an asterisk by my name of, well, you didn't fight this person, you don't fight that person. I mean, why do you think that we're having, well, not we, but that it's so hard to make these kind of fights happen? This is what the public wants to see.
Listen, I think Floyd Mayweather changed the game of boxing.
Right.
And I think that there's this perception out there that guys can make that kind of money. And unfortunately, those are like one. He's like Tiger Woods. Those are once in a generation athletes, right?
Right.
And so I think a lot of times these guys get hung up on the money, as opposed to what happened to the days of, hey, we just gonna box it out, best man win because I love what I'm doing because it's a great sport, and you know, I don't know what happened those days, man. But it's almost like it's almost like that. Because money has determined everything in the sport, it's really it's really hurt the sport at its core.
Wow. Do you think that, you know, I tell people this, you know, when you know when you have guys like the Logan brothers, the YouTube sensations, you know, here's my problem. If you want to box, I don't have any problem with that. At least, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You don't have. I'm not telling you to fight the top 10, but hey, you fight some of the guys that can't even tie their shoelaces anymore to give some kind of credibility to what you're doing instead of fighting MMA fighters and fighting Floyd and listen. That was purely a financial thing. It proved nothing, not on Floyd's end because his legacy is already been etched in stone. But when you turn around and you look at these guys and you're like saying, how is the commission, like these sanctions, how is the commission of these states letting this stuff even, be approved?
I mean, man, that the Roy Jones and Tyson thing, man, in my opinion, was an embarrassment to our sport. Those two guys didn't have no business being in there, man.
Right.
And for some reason, we had this persona that because of their big names, that they're going to fight like they did when they were 25 years old. Come on, man.
Yeah.
I mean, in Floyd's instance, Floyd's just a business guy. I mean, he's sitting there saying, "Hey, if I can go make another $500 million, why not?"
Yeah, exactly.
We probably would.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah, man. What do you think about? Here's the quintessential question here. You got Caleb Plant out there looking to fight, maybe. It was in the works. I don't know where the negotiations are at this time. Canelo Alvarez. What do you think is going to... You think that fight is going to come to fruition, or...
Listen, I tried to dig up research on that, and, one side said one thing, one side said another. Some of the things Canelo was saying, okay, I get it.
Right.
A lot of the things that Caleb Plant were saying, okay, I get it.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know if that fight's ever going to happen or not. It'll be a shame once again to our sport. That, here you have a fight that could draw no telling what kind of money.
Right.
But for whatever reason, contracts get hung up on one side or the other. But I mean, I think it's an intriguing fight. I think Caleb certainly deserves that shot.
Right.
Some of the guys that they put in there with Canelo lately, I mean, come on, it better. I mean, that guy, a multi-divisional champion.
Right.
Put him in there with, like you were saying, put him in there with the top guys.
Yeah. Do you think? I mean, going into this fight, of course, I'm not taking anything away from Caleb. But looking at it on paper, we all know that Canelo is the A side on this fight, unfortunately, and Plant is the B side. But with that being said, hypothetically speaking, if you were in Caleb's position and you were offered $10 million, right, would you take the fight and say, okay, I understand the position. I'm, on paper, I'm the B side. And then take the $10 million, and should you become victorious, turn around and say, you know what? I'm not going to do the B side anymore. If somebody's going to fight me, I'm going to call the shots. And I think people get mad at Canelo for this, but it's happened to him. When he was champion in the middleweight division, Floyd made him come down in weight, not justifying those things, but because on paper, Floyd was the A side. Do you think there's a way that can be negated at times? And
I think so. I mean, egos play into a lot of that,
sure,
right? I mean,
sure.
I mean, Caleb's sitting there saying, "No, I'm the A side."
Right.
Well, no, I'm the. But if I'm Caleb Plant and I'm his camp, and they come at me with 10 million, I'm taking it. Because here's the thing, Dale. Here's the thing. Well, two things. Number one, who knows that 10 million opportunity ever comes around again? Number one.
Exactly.
And then the second piece of that is, let's say worst case scenario, you lose to Canelo.
Right.
Okay. I mean, it's not going to kill your career, and you're not going to go back to fighting bums and starting all over. Right. I mean, you lost to a pound for pound king right now, right? So
exactly. There's no shame in that.
I am figuring that one out. See, listen, same way with Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence.
Yeah.
I mean, that whole 60-40 thing. Come on, guys. Put the egos aside. And I know promoters get in the way and all that too. I mean, that's just part of the business side of it. But I think sometimes we wonder why our sport struggles in the professional side, and this is the exact reason why. Egos and money.
Wow. And it's a shame because they're only, the fans are suffering from that. Not the fighters. The fans are suffering because, these are the fights that we want to see. And at the end of the day, people want to say, man, I can remember when, like the Bud and Spence, the ongoing negotiations, and people saying Spence is pound for pound the best, and people saying Crawford's the pound for pound best, and he's the undisputed champion. Well, here's the problem with that. If one person has 2 belts and another person has a belt, you're not undisputed. There's a dispute. That's why you're going to fight. I mean, am I right?
You telling the truth, right, man.
So when you go ahead and fight, and one person captures all the belts, then you are undisputed.
That's exactly right. And we forget that sometimes,
It's crazy.
But we just, man, listen, I'm pulling for Big D because honestly, Dale, I think you and I both know the professional box until we get that American superstar heavyweight back.
Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, people want to see big guys beat each other up.
Right. Exactly. That's what they pay to see, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
It's crazy. Well, champ, listen, Andy, I told you, I like being on time. I have to be on. Unfortunately, I have to be on time and ending my show. We're winding down, folks. I've had Andy Smith, great amateur trainer. Humanitarian, just all in all, like I said, my brother in Christ, who I love very dearly. Andy, it's a pleasure having you on the show. Please come back anytime. Talk about YCAP. Talk about what you're doing. If those of you that follow this show, if you're ever in the Chattanooga area and you want to stop by YCAP, please get in contact with him. Andy, if you have a Twitter or email address, please say it now and let the fans know how they can get in touch with you and how to support amateur boxing.
Yeah, man. Coach Andy C. Smith on Twitter at Coach Andy C. Smith, or man, look us up on Facebook, YCAP Boxing Club in Chattanooga, and or inbox me. I'll send you my number. But listen, Coach Dale, it's always a pleasure to see you, brother. And man, we support you all the way up here in Chattanooga. And I tell all my friends I come in contact with, check out Coffee with the Champ. You've had some amazing guests on your show, brother.
Well, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. And it's because of guys like yourself and other people I've had on my show. I know I'm not ESPN, but this is a more relaxed setting. It's great. And
this is way better.
But, man, it's been a blessing. Man, my best to you guys. Chad, tell him I said hi, I love him. Tell Roger once again, when that title comes, no excuses. I want my comp ticket.
Front and center, brother.
Folks, you've watched another edition of Coffee with the Champ. My guest was Andy Smith of Chattanooga, Tennessee, great amateur coach. Go on his webpage, look at what he's doing for the young people, not only in the realm of the sweet science, but mentoring them for life. That's been our show for today. Guys, go to YouTube, hit the like button, press subscribe, and Lord willing, the following weeks I'll be back with you with another show. Nice guests. Until then, take care. God bless. Andy, stay on the show.